Yeah,
Well,
that's fine.
Madeline's running the meeting tonight, so I'll shut up. Sorry.
All right, well,
Don't feel a little rushed. Try to get a lot accomplished in a short amount of time.
all right. Well,
But
we're
if-
live, just so you know. So,
Okay, yeah, so it's what time is it? It's 6:02, and we'll start the meeting. And we'll start with Lisa since she's here right on time. Great. Lisa, the
Hi,
floor is
good evening,
yours.
good evening, everybody. Tiffany is out this week, so here to kind of update on the financial assistance, the Newburyport Rental Assistance Program. We have assisted 6 households so far, including 3 seniors, 5 adults, and 4 children, for a total of $13,232 in rental assistance. We still have available $11,768, and pending currently is 1 application request in the amount of $1,400, which we expect to approve, just waiting on some final documentations. We're thankful for this group, and we are still seeing that housing is still in a crisis kind of mode. We have developed a few partnerships with CTI and RAFT, and continue to sit on meetings every other Friday with them in terms of rental assistance through RAFT, and also with the Department of Housing and Community Development for emergency assistance programs as well for housing and families.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions about Lisa's presentation? We did get a report, so we have that submitted from Caitlin. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Just thank you as always.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Such important work. We're so fortunate to have you administering this program for us, and for all the work that Pettingill does.
Thank you so much.
And we will be, while we're waiting for John Feehan, we could go ahead and talk about item 4 on our agenda regarding having Copeland and Page, the city's attorneys, review our guidelines and procedures for our new rental assistance program, which we've been waiting to launch. It's basically ready to go. But I think that the city, I think Caitlin, the planning department recommended that we have Copeland and Page take a look at our guidelines first. And so we wanted to have a vote on authorizing some of our funds for this expense. Did I capture it correctly, Caitlin? Anything else you want to add?
absolutely, no, that's just right. I see Andy Port has arrived in the meeting and his hand's up. I'm not quite sure if you wanted to speak on this item or not. Andy?
Yeah, sorry, Caitlin, thank you. And I apologize. I just wanted to raise my hand, try to follow protocol when I do have the ability to do it. As host, I don't have an ability to raise hand, but Caitlin's hosting. Thanks. So just briefly, the mayor apologizes he couldn't attend the meeting tonight, but obviously he's interested in helping with where possible with initiatives. So just wanted to let you know that. Happy to weigh in on other items, but not necessarily this one. Thanks.
I'm just curious, Caitlin, do you have any idea of what this might cost?
I knew that question was going to come up, so Andy and I chatted about this today. And while we don't have the KP Law contract, I think we're estimating that they charge in the area of about $250 an hour. And review of these, guidelines and required documents, I think would take an hour or 2 of time. So we were suggesting that you perhaps cap it at no more than $1,000, and I don't think you'll come anywhere near that.
Sounds very reasonable. Do we have a motion?
Motion to cap KP Law expense? Is that what?
And to commit the funds for this purpose?
I second it.
Any discussion? Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Members, could I just interject? And I'll rely on Caitlin to just confirm the documents that we'll submit to them for review. And if you could also, via Caitlin, maybe just confirm when you want that returned, any markup that they might have, then if any, to you, just so we can make sure the turnaround time we get from them is acceptable.
Andy, I'll give them to you tomorrow. They're all ready to go. I think we'd want it probably processed as soon as possible because this program is ready to go. So as soon as we can get their kind of markup, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So is sort of as soon as possible. Does that mean sort of like Tuesday, Wednesday next week? Does it mean Friday next week? Or I just trying to make sure that.
I don't think it's urgent. I think we'd give them a week or two to do it.
Okay, I'm going to give them until this Friday next week just to kind of
Okay.
set a deadline in our email to them. Thanks.
Sounds good.
So,
I'm looking and I still don't see John Feehan, by the way. So.
Right, but I was going to suggest that we were going to have Andy Port provide just a very brief information, or Jordy, on the work that's been going on with the Afghan refugee families living in Newburyport, because I think it might help inform our discussion with John when he arrives. So we're kind of bumping around on our agenda, but I don't know whether Jordy or Andy would want to take the lead on just providing a brief update.
Yeah, this is Andy. I'm more than happy to defer to Jordy. I'm happy to elaborate. I think he's just the best point person on this thus far.
Right?
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. So let's see, I talked with Andy about this a little earlier today, as well as with Suzanne Cameron. And so I think we're all quite interested to hear about this potential opportunity that I believe John is going to be talking about, as well as Suzanne and others, in terms of a house available near the Y that could be used as a essentially a resettlement home for at least one of these big Afghan families, as well as presumably other refugees and evacuees in the future. So I think that's very promising. We've been trying as a group, trying to sort of collectively focus on this with members of the trust and other representatives of the city and the church groups and others have met a few times to try to brainstorm about how to address the permanent housing issue that is staring at all of us, with these multiple Afghan families who cannot stay in the church basements forever. We've initiated a bit of a process to look at city-owned land in terms of whether any sort of buildable lots might be made available to work with a partner, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or some other developer or nonprofit housing developer to actually create new housing, based on a fundraising campaign done by the churches and others. That's sort of a long process, and that's been driven to date by the consideration that the existing housing stock in our area is not very responsive to this particular need, both in terms of the size required for these large families. All the families are like 9 or 10 people, except for one family of 3, almost 4 people. And but that I think we all need to be going down every avenue we can. So the prospect of this house potentially being available, potentially being feasible, I think is a very good one, particularly because of its location in the downtown area. So I'm just sort of speaking stream of consciousness a bit. Madeline, do you have anything to add to that? Or Suzanne, you all have been participating in these meetings as well with the larger group.
No, that's Suzanne. I think you've captured it. The churches are doing an amazing amount of work, and Brian has also been involved
That's right.
in that group. And I think we're really just fact finding at this point, as we keep saying, we don't know what we don't know, because this is all so new to all of us. But it's exciting, and it's a good exercise in, creating new muscles to try to figure this out. So I think, this potential property that John will discuss if he shows up is, it's intriguing. So, Brian, do you know anything about this yet, or? No. Okay. So essentially, and I can just say this much, there's a neighbor of the YW that has offered for the YW or roof overhead to purchase a 4-bedroom, 1-bath home. It's YW adjacent. I'm not sure of the address exactly, but it doesn't matter. And so I think it's going to come down to fundraising, and John was planning to bring it to us tonight to consider for funding from the Housing Trust. Now, I will say, I'm just full disclosure. This is informational only, because I spoke with John Jordy, and I had a meeting this morning, and Andy as well. Mio and I both sit on the board of Roof Overhead, so we are going to have to abstain. So it's going to be really up to the rest of the trust to make this decision. So we cannot weigh in. So I'll just put that out there.
I guess one other thing I might add is, it's been an interesting internal discussion in the city regarding potential city land, whether it's for affordable housing in general versus for the Afghan evacuee families in particular. Most of the city's land is pretty clearly designated for other land uses, right? In terms of the parks and the conservation land are all protected by Article 97 with their particular land use. We have all sorts of infrastructure and facilities on other land. There's some land that's owned by the water department or sewer department that may not be in active use now, but that they do not want to give up use of. So it really comes down to there are a couple of old tax title foreclosure properties, house lots in the West End. And there's actually a new process being kicked off by the city's treasurer to pursue tax title foreclosure on a number of properties, a number of parcels that taxes haven't been paid on them for decades, out in the sort of Goldsmith, et cetera area in the Turkey Hill neighborhood in the West End. That's a administrative process that will take a number of months, and we'll have to sort of see how that all plays out. But one of the ideas that has been discussed is whether some of those properties, which are not wetlands, could be potentially assimilated and accessed and used for housing in these neighborhoods. So we'll be keeping an eye on that in the coming months.
I think one of the other items of note from the meeting, the last meeting, is that the churches were going to craft a compassionate request, ask, if you will, that would be, that we would all be able to share as well, but it would go out to parishioners primarily and beyond to request potential rental units. So the rent would be covered by various sources, including the fundraising from the churches, as well as emergent, rental assistance, ERAP, et cetera. So, so there's that piece as well. So that could potentially happen if somebody steps forward or a couple people step forward to offer up their properties.
I think that identifying available rentals, which I know are few and far between, but it would provide the most immediate housing opportunity. So, definitely need to pursue that while we're looking at these other options.
Yeah, and
Brian, did you want to weigh in on something?
uh,
I saw
uh,
you. Brian, did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, I think the rental opportunity is their best bet. As we said, this would be great for Newburyport. Just Newburyport's a tough rentals. Like our church, we settled Afghan refugees out of Reading, but they're in, Somerville and other places where we can get housing. So it's a big task in Newburyport, but worth the effort.
I have a comment. There's a house coming up for foreclosure. It was supposed to be scheduled for foreclosure this week. It's that 209 High Street, the Hunter house, which is the corner of High Street and what's that street that goes down to the middle school?
Johnson.
Johnson. And it was scheduled for this past Monday, and it was rescheduled for April 18th. And that house is big enough. It's 6,000 square feet. It's in terrible condition, needs to be fixed up. But if that should be discussed, if somebody could buy that for a rental unit for the Afghan people with a big family, that would be perfect.
I'm not so sure that's going to be available. I think Jerry checked into it, and the daughter, it's an estate transfer. There's something kind of wacky going on with it.
It's very wacky.
But it's not likely to go to foreclosure. I mean, maybe.
Well, I talked with the law firm, and they said that they have scheduled this numerous times, and the latest rescheduling is for the 18th of April. And who knows what's going to happen. But Roseanne's daughter would need to come up with a significant amount of money to prevent that foreclosure. So I don't know if that's going to happen. But that's a great house that could be converted for housing. And then my prior talks with Al Clifford, he said, if you get a project, there will be all kinds of people in town that would be willing to help kick in money to make it work. And that's separate from the state and all the rest of it. It's private funds. And I think it may work.
Thank you for
What kind
bringing
of
that
price
up.
range do you think is going to be on that? We're
Sorry?
talking about what kind of price range would something like that be?
Well,
Because-
if the bank takes it back, it would be whatever the bank would be willing to let it go for, which would be
Yeah.
significantly less than the assessed value of the property.
Hmm.
So
Was there like a number 417 on that or something like that?
is that what she owes?
Yeah,
Okay. How did she get that high?
I don't know.
Okay,
But the property's worth $1 million plus.
of course.
Yeah.
No question about it. But that's one example. Then I'll continue to get information and bring it to the trust
Yeah,
so
it's
you
worth
know
looking
what's
at,
going
yeah.
on.
Of course, it
Brian,
would
maybe-
require acting quickly, right?
Yes. Not fairly quickly. If the bank owns it, you've got time. Brian, maybe you and I could work on that together.
Yeah, all right, I'd be happy to.
Okay. I'll be in touch.
The size of that sounds very interesting compared to the one that's available for the YW, because that's 2,000 square feet and it's like she wants 750, something like that for that
Sure.
property with a postage stamp kitchen and no land. I don't know what the other one has, but in terms of housing.
Don't we have two Afghan families, one with a big family, one with a moderate family that we need to find housing for?
Two big families.
Two big families.
Okay,
Two big families, yeah.
Well, actually, I
You wonder
agree.
if the bank would be open to, selling it reasonably given, as a charitable act.
it is.
Yeah.
Just to point out, I think it was Mary asking, there's two large families living at St. Paul's right now. But
Yep.
then this smaller family has moved in more recently. There's a child on the way. So there's a family of 3 about to be a family of 4. So a more modest sized family, which is I think what you were pointing out.
Yep.
How many children in the
There's a
larger
contribution.
family? Gordy,
I'm sorry, say again?
how many children in the larger family?
The 2 families at St. Paul's are families of 9 and 10. So they have 7 and 8 kids
Okay.
with the 2 parents.
They could both live in that house.
Yeah, that's what I was
There's
thinking.
enough room in that house to hold them
Yeah.
both.
Yep.
No question about it.
I would be interested to know whether CPA funds could be used for any of these housing acquisition options.
It depends on what entity ends up owning the house. That's the trick. And if it's something that the city can finagle their way into, I think they'd be able to do that, meaning us.
Just another question. Are there any businesses that, because of COVID, have gone out of business that we could convert their space to housing anywhere in the city? Just think it might be cheaper. You'd have to renovate it, but the $750,000 house needs work, according to John. So I'm thinking I have to put money into that anyway.
This is Andy. Sorry, I don't know if I can speak to specific locations just yet, but and certainly there might be some possibility, but we have to keep in mind the potential hurdles that we might deal with in terms of zoning or allowances and things like that. So it probably depends on a location if we can locate something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly we're happy to take a look at anything. I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head that would be appropriate there. We could certainly, Caitlin, for instance, we could do some outreach to the Chamber of Commerce and see, to some of the major owners and kind of get a feeler out there and then figure out from there with Jennifer Blanchet, our zoning administrator, just trying to make sure we're on the same page about how quick a path or simple a path it might be. Because there are some restrictions about, for instance, residential uses on first floor downtown, that kind of thing. So just stuff we'd have to, other parameters we have to keep in mind for something like that.
Okay. It'd be interesting information to have anyway. Just to know that.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah.
So Madeline, I have to run, unfortunately, but I'll reconnect with everybody.
Bye, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Okay, any other discussion on this topic? I have the feeling we're not going to see John Fian tonight.
Yeah.
I texted him and he has not responded. So
I did too.
yeah, hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
We, speaking of John, I mean, one of the items on the agenda was to hear from him regarding the YWCA's application for CPA funds. It's the policy and procedure that they would make a presentation to the Housing Trust prior to making their presentation to the CPC. But I'm not sure when that would happen if he is not able to attend tonight.
It's Caitlin. Perhaps we could have a discussion and I could give an overview if you'd like.
That sounds great.
Okay. So let's see. So John Feehan put in an application for the YWCA Women's Residence to the CPC for CPA grant this round. He's seeking to renovate the women's kitchen to put in new cabinets, new ceiling, new walls, and just to renovate it. hasn't seen any kind of work in many years. But I will note that we are working with the Community Preservation Coalition as this application has been flagged as to perhaps not having all of these elements be eligible for CPA funding. So we're currently working with them to make sure that this application is CPA eligible. And welcome
that
for any
they're-
discussion that I could, I guess, send back to John Feehan or, put in a letter to the CPC indicating your support or more questions that you would have for him.
I was going to say that I saw in their application that they make note of the fact that to be eligible for CPA funds under affordable housing, there's supposed to be an affordable housing restriction, and they're asking for a waiver on that. And I think committing to not increasing the current rents for a period of 3 years and to sort of justify that waiver. I mean, I personally think it's a great program that they offer. I can't help but imagine that they need to keep up with the property and that we all know how expensive that is. Does anybody else have any comments on this? Have you had a chance to look at the application? I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Can you explain the restriction again? I guess I'm confused as to why we're looking at a kitchen reno here. Is it because it's within the residence?
What
It's
do
in
you
the
mean by
women's
restriction?
residence at 13 Market Street.
Okay, and so what was the issue about the restriction?
The affordable housing restriction?
Mm-hmm.
There is not, my understanding is that there is not an affordable housing restriction on this property. It has been, run as a charitable housing program, but there is no actual affordable housing restriction on it, restricting the rents for X number of years. And to be eligible for CPA funds under affordable housing, I think there should be, I'm not an expert on this, but it's my understanding. And I think what they stated in their application is that is supposed to be in place. And they're saying that they would be asking for a waiver for that, restrict that policy, that there be a restriction. And offering to, in lieu of having a formal affordable housing restriction, offering to, commit to not raising rents for a period of 3 years. I don't know if that works for CPA rules, but that's not necessarily our job. I think our job is to say whether or not we want to support this application in, the fact that it supports meeting the affordable housing needs in the city of Newburyport.
Yes, I just want to add, I think I didn't know about, we hadn't discussed this at the board, so I'm on the board of the YW, so I can't have to recuse myself, but I believe that all the women that rent there are paying very affordable rents. It's not like it's a market rate now. I think it's probably for the red tape that designation brings to the YW, since they don't have it now. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I agree, Madeline. I don't see this as our remit necessarily. I think it's really, something we need to talk to the CPC about directly.
Well, it was laid out in the WISE application. So the ball is really in the CPC's court. I think our job is to, I would imagine they would appreciate it if we were to take a vote to support their funding request to the CPC if members feel that that's something that they're comfortable with.
What is the amount again?
The amount is $50,000.
50?
And they are,
50, yes.
Yeah.
yeah, seeking to match those funds with another funding source that they will, be submitting a grant application for, but I don't think they'll know for, several months whether or not they're going to get that funding. But I think that the budget is 100,000 and they have one cost estimate from one contractor at this point in time.
So do we have, without Mio, we have,
Four of us.
yeah, 4 of us. No,
We have 3.
we have 3 of us. That's not enough, I don't think. So we can't vote. We need 4. 4 out of 7, right?
That's right. But I will
Yeah.
note that perhaps you can voice your support during the meeting where the CPC hears from John. It will be March 23rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. So perhaps, someone can speak in support of that application.
Madeline, you're planning to attend, yes?
I will
Yeah.
be there.
Okay. I will be away. I apologize.
Okay, so I think that's fine. I mean, I don't really think this is a controversial request,
Oh.
in regards to the mission. But I would like to say that I appreciate it when entities that are applying to the CPC for funds related to affordable housing, when they can take the time to come to the Housing Trust before submitting their application. I understand that that's not always possible. John's a very busy guy. So no hard feelings, but it's helpful, I think, to try to keep that procedure in place. Okay. Any other discussion on this?
For the record, I really support that $50,000 request. I think it makes sense. It's a small amount of money to provide housing and let them do it. I really feel that would work. Now, is Mary not a voting? Oh, the chairman. Okay, there's only 3 of us, right? Okay.
No,
you're-
she's on the board of the
On the board,
YW.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, would any written support from individual trustees work without the whole trust voting? I'm guessing yes.
John,
Anything will
I
have-
just got a text from John saying he's coming now. So
Oh,
maybe
good.
clarify
Yay.
things.
All right, why don't we put a hold on this discussion and I don't know what John means by now, but we can move on to, we can approve minutes. We don't have them. We'll have them the next time we meet, which is fine. We could do something easy like talk about our next meeting date.
Are there any other updates from planning?
Well, I was just trying to do something really quick.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Caitlin suggested some possible meeting dates.
Yep, I suggest, let's see. So I suggest April, I give you a few options. April 21st, May 5th, or May 19th. I believe April 21st is school vacation week, by the way.
I'm fine with any of those.
Me too. Whatever you want to pick.
I guess
I'm good
I
too.
was wondering if because of some of these matters that we've been discussing tonight, which are somewhat time sensitive, if we would want to meet on April 21st rather than pushing off to May.
That's fine with me.
Yep, I'm good.
I want to say if this opportunity presents itself, we might have to meet earlier. Just we
Mhm.
might have to do an ad hoc or a e-vote or something.
That's fine. Anytime.
Okay.
I'm completely flexible.
Okay, sounds good. So the next official date will be April 21st at 6 p.m.
Great.
Great. And I see John Feehan has arrived. Hi, John.
Hello.
John, the floor is yours. We have been discussing some of the matters in your absence. We've discussed the application to the CPC for the Market Street residents. I think we're all in agreement that we're supportive of that. We cannot take a vote tonight because we don't have a quorum. I will be in attendance at the CPC meeting on the 23rd, and I can voice my support for your application at that time. I don't know whether anyone feels that we need to discuss that matter further, or I think you also have another topic that you wanted to discuss with us.
Yes, so first of all, I apologize for being late. I had it in my mind that it was 7 o'clock and so decided to go out for a walk. And then somebody texted me, fortunately, so I raced back and got in here. So my apologies. The other matter, and thank you for your support of our application for kitchen renovations. It's long overdue. The kitchen really needs some help, so that's greatly appreciated.
John, we did have some discussion about the waiver that you were requesting. Maybe you could just explain that.
So we're over time, I guess the CPA regulations have changed, or the city has begun enforcing them differently, or I'm not quite sure what, but now they want a affordable housing restriction placed on CPA funds. And our building is 200 years old. It's part of the YWCA. It's connected to our administrative offices and to our pool and fitness center. And for this amount of money, I hesitate placing this type of a restriction on the building because it's never had an affordable housing restriction on it. It is the one and only asset that the YWCA has that's its own. And so placing that kind of a restriction on it is just burdensome to the YWCA.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
John. Did anybody need any more explanation on that subject?
Hey, John, you might want to just mention the affordability of the units currently anyway, right?
Yes, so currently there's no formal income testing of our units. However, the majority of the women who live there are extremely low income. Many of them are on fixed income, either Social Security or disability. And we keep the rents really low. Like, I don't think in 10 years, I don't think we've raised the rents at all. So right now, the cheapest room is, I think, somewhere in the realm of $75 a week, and it goes up to $110 a week. I might be off a little bit on my numbers, but and that includes all utilities. So through CPA funds, through private grants, we've been able to do all the major capital repairs to the building and keep the rents low. And so we're certainly willing to keep the rents low and to enter in an agreement to do so in lieu of a waiver. I mean, in lieu of a affordable housing restriction.
Great,
Thanks, John.
thank you. as I said, we had a discussion before you joined us, and the general consensus is that we're in support, but we're unable to take a vote. But we will be communicating our support in different ways. But I believe, John, that you had another matter that you wanted to discuss with us.
Yes, please. So the YWCA has been participating with a group that's been addressing the problem, or not the problem, but addressing the Afghan families that have been brought to Newburyport. One family, as you know, is at St. Paul's, one is at the Unitarian Church, and one is at the Congregational Church. And two of these families are extremely large families. I believe one family has 11 members and the other one has 9 members. And all three families are currently living in the churches, assuming that you all know all this, and that the issue has come up regarding how to proceed with housing for them. And one of the challenges that they have is that if to find an apartment building that is large enough, that might have 4 bedrooms, is virtually impossible in Newburyport. So one of the thoughts that I had was, if you wanted to approach this by looking at purchasing a building and then using it for a rental to the family, that it is possible to do that. And Roof Overhead Collaborative has scattered site units right now. And so it's set up to do that type of a program. The challenge, of course, is that buying a house in Newburyport is extremely expensive. And as a comparison, DHCD likes to see a single unit produce of housing at around $400,000. And they're willing to stretch that up to about $600,000 in certain circumstances. But for them, the sweet point is around $400,000 per unit. The YWCA produced the units in Salisbury at around $340,000 a unit. So to do a single unit for a family where the asking price of the house is $750,000, and we're gonna assume that it needs some level of modernization. It's a big ask, and I wanted to touch base with the Affordable Housing Trust to see if, given the circumstances of these families, where their country, we were at war with their country for almost 20 years, and then evacuated these families from their homeland and resettled them in Newburyport, whether or not there's an appetite for doing something like purchasing a house that's going to cost $750,000 to purchase it, plus maybe another $100,000 just in reserve. Whether or not the Affordable Housing Trust is interested in supporting that type of a venture, and if so, would you be willing to contribute $250,000 to that type of a project?
Any discussion? I guess, John, it would be interesting to have some more details on the property and what your plan would be. Would you be getting any financing, which would require an appraisal? Would you be doing a walkthrough with a contractor to determine what kind of work would need to be done to really sort of flesh out your full budget?
So yes, we would anticipate that the YWCA would have to take, or the Roof Overhead Collaborative would have to take some mortgage out on the property, and that we would do due diligence, including environmental review, go through with the contractor to see what the status of the building is, and then also an appraisal on the building. I don't have a firm proposal for the committee tonight. I don't want to waste my time running down a rabbit hole if there's no sense that this is a project that people would want to move forward with.
John, is there a way for you to get in there?
I think the answer is yes. I could call the owner and see if we could get in there next week.
Well, one of the questions I raised before you joined us was whether or not CPA funds could be used for this purpose. You know, we sort of get back to that question of having to have an affordable housing restriction. And I don't know whether, I just, I don't know whether CPA triggers any fair housing laws, or you know, you'd be purchasing a property with CPA funds and private funds, and for a special population group. So I guess I'm just kind of curious about that question about whether or not CPA funds would be eligible. The trust has some unencumbered funds, and I don't know if those funds, if some of them come from CPA or not. And I also would feel like if the trust was able to make a commitment of some of these unencumbered funds, I'd be interested to know whether or not we could seek to be reimbursed by this with CPA funds in the future. So those are some of the questions that are popping up for me.
Yeah. Madeline, you did mention one thing about a affordable housing restriction, and we would absolutely be supportive of putting an affordable housing restriction on this property. In terms of fair housing, I think there is an issue. When I broached that with this, as you know, when I broached that with the state, they didn't seem to be willing to consider a waiver or an allowance for this type of a situation. In contrast, you know, many of us remember that after the Vietnam War, as families were being resettled, there was a specific designation that those families had that allowed them access then to certain categories of funds, certain categories of, you know, vouchers and housing and everything else. And there doesn't seem to be an appetite to provide that same status or that same level of funding to these people who are fleeing a war zone. So I don't know how to answer the fair housing question.
Maybe Caitlin or Andy could look into how CPA fits into a purpose like this.
Yep, it's Caitlin. I will look into it. I mean, I know that you can use CPA funds to, can be spent on the acquisition of this kind of property. And I know I'm looking at the coalition site, you know, CPA gives preference to adaptive reuse of existing buildings on developed sites. So I know that, you know, some of your undesignated funds do come from CPA funds. I know that CPA funds can be used to support these kinds of projects, just like you have the Community Partners Program, you know, which is all, you know, based out of CPA funds, and you've provided grants to the YW in the past.
Yeah, I concur with Caitlin. Thank you.
Yeah, and just also, and I promised I wouldn't weigh in here because of a conflict, but I'm wondering if there's a humanitarian carve out here that we can, you know, utilize the humanitarian aspect of this, and that the nonprofit would designate this property as a refugee resettlement property rather than combine it with the other program.
And from the roof overhead perspective, I did meet with the board today. Thanks, Susan. And they were willing to consider that type of designation for the property, and to make that something that's permanent, because unfortunately, we're always facing these crises where there are refugees that are fleeing.
This is Jordy. I would echo everything everyone said, and I'm also generally aware that even in the fair housing laws context, that there are preferential treatment, if that's the phrase to use, given to various different categories of people, whether they're victims of domestic violence or there's definitely some public housing authorities that have broader preference for families who are displaced by natural disaster or by wars or whatever. So I tend to think that we should be interpreting that not narrowly, but interpreting that broadly in terms of the intent of that. We, like Caitlin said, I mean, we can try to figure out how to track that down some more, but as she's noted, CPA funds have already gone to the Y, you know, to help particular populations. I don't think that should stand in our way.
I shouldn't weigh in either, but I agree with Jordy. I think that expanding it will give the YW or roof more flexibility in the future if we don't have those types of populations coming, but we do have people who have gone through a natural disaster in another country or in part of the US who need relocation, or even like the Salisbury fire victims recently had to find new housing. So I think if we expand it to that kind of thing, I would be happy with that. Well, of course, I shouldn't be weighing in, but.
So I'm just sort of wondering about what kind of an action we could take tonight with perhaps two of our members not being able to vote.
Perhaps a straw vote if John is looking for some sort of signal as to his sort of route to take.
Well, I am very excited about this opportunity for the trust to be able to step in and take some kind of positive, show some positive support for initiatives like this, addressing this most important need. I feel like one of the reasons why the trust exists is so that we can be nimble and commit funds to housing opportunities rather than having to, you know, go through a more lengthy bureaucratic process, you know, taking to city council or something like that. So, you know, we have funds available that we can commit, and I would be excited about the opportunity to do so. I would, though, like to add that I would like to feel that we, as a trust, would go back to the CPC with an application in the future. If we actually end up expending funds for this purpose, that we would go back to the CPC and make a request to be reimbursed. The funds that we've assembled, we've taken many years to build up some funds that we would be able to commit to another initiative. So, you know, I'm always thinking about an affordable housing development opportunity where the city of Newburyport has to provide matching funds in order to compete for state affordable housing dollars. And I just would like to feel that we could try to get to recoup this funding in the future with CPA funds.
That's a really an excellent point, and especially as it relates to the Brown School, hopefully moving sooner rather than later. So, oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to say anything.
I guess I would note, this is Jordy again, just building off of what Madeline's saying, by all means, yes. The trust should go back to the CPC in the future to, you know, whether it's characterized as reimbursing or replenishing. You know, the city the community has not had many opportunities, right, to effectively spend and invest funds in affordable housing opportunities. And once they come along, I think there's a pretty strong case made to seize the day on that, and then provide funding for specific projects or replenish those reserve accounts. So yeah, to me, that's not a question at all, and I think there's a strong argument to be made with the CPC and then the city council after that. If for no other reason, just balance with the other categories of the CPC.
So I'm wondering, Bob, did you have anything you wanted to contribute to this discussion?
Well, I think, John, you've got a great approach to solving the problem for those refugees. And if you pick a building someplace, it gives this community a project to contribute towards. And in my speaking with Al Clifford, he said, if you get a project, he said, I will speak to the other building developers in this community to lead the opportunity to raise a ton of money to do something for that usage, which is affordable housing. And that opens up other nonprofits in town to be able to contribute a significant amount of money to help people find housing, which we desperately need. We don't have affordable housing in this town. And I think that's a great idea. And I will talk to you, John, in private about a few ideas I have in addition and see if it'll work. I completely support what you're doing. Completely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
You're
That's
welcome.
great. So I guess what I would think might be appropriate would be for the trust. I mean, I don't know how we do this formally, but the concept of designating $250,000 in our unencumbered funds towards the acquisition of a property in Newburyport for Afghan refugee permanent housing, so that the Y or whomever would feel, well, I guess it would be the Y, to be acquiring the property or some entity affiliated with the Y, so that you would know that the funds could be available to you so that you could sort of move forward as you assess opportunities. But I think we would need to be able to have more specific information and, understand exactly, what the acquisition was going to involve. But to sort of earmark funds for this purpose. And then I would want to know, like, how do we actually, what do we need to do to formally take a vote on this since we don't have a quorum? And, what kind of action, how do we actually transfer the funds? So that's a lot.
And Madeline, I learned about this opportunity on Tuesday. And she's ready to put the thing on the market. So, I asked her if she'd hold off for a couple of days. And that's why I don't have a well-designed proposal for you to review at this point.
Right, I understand. So maybe Caitlin or Andy, could you give us a little guidance on how do you think we formalize something so that we can give John some confidence in moving forward?
Hi,
Well, I'm
Madeline.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andy.
Were you assuming a sort of straw poll vote or?
Well, I mean, we have, as a trust, taken votes via email in the past. We can get Karen Weiner to, we can communicate with Karen. Oh, I see John's got his hand up. John, did you want to weigh in?
I think I've gotten what I need from the committee at this point. I don't think you need a formal vote for me. I wanted to assess whether or not the committee was willing to support this type of a proposal. If we went into a purchase and sales, it would obviously be dependent on funding, and we would then submit a complete application to the committee that detailed, that provided a lot more information so that you can take a, be ready to take a more formal vote on it.
That sounds good. I think you hear that we're very supportive.
Yes.
We'll need
And I'm
more
sorry,
information.
just for clarification, John, when you said committee, did you mean the trust, or just want to make sure we understand correctly, the trust or a CBC that we're referring to when you say committee?
I meant the trust.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, I will make the point of communicating this with Karen Weiner, who's out of town, just so that she's up to date. And, if we need to have a meeting before April 21st, is that when we scheduled our next meeting? Yeah, April 21st, we will, to respond to this opportunity.
Okay. And I'll try to do better to be on time.
Okay, this is very exciting. Thank you so much, John, for all you're doing to address this very pressing need. Really appreciate it. So stay in touch.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
John.
Thanks, John.
Bye, John.
I know.
So I would like to suggest that we, we have on the agenda touching on our strategic plan. I can do that very quickly, but I didn't know whether or not Andy or Caitlin had anything that they wanted to update the trust on.
It's Caitlin here. No real updates, just to let you know, just to confirm for you all that I did submit an application to the CPC for a request totaling $230,000 for a set aside of $200,000 for affordable housing development initiatives, and $30,000 to be used for consultant services to update the city's housing production plan. And to let you all know that the presentation that Madeline will give a brief overview to the CPC on Wednesday, March 23rd. And then the next meeting would be deliberations that Madeline may want to attend on April 27th at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Caitlin, for giving that update. Also worth noting maybe that the Minco, I apologize because I'm multitasking during our meeting, but I don't think it's been mentioned yet, maybe that the Minco 40R project on Route 1 was approved last night at the planning board meeting for the 92 units, 23, I believe, affordable, and all 100 or 100%, I should say, counting on the city's subsidized housing inventory because it's a rental project, just to keep you in the loop. And obviously, as you know, there's ongoing efforts to regroup the council and try to get some consensus relative to the adaptive reuse of the Brown School for housing, presumably, and the outstanding questions about the gym space or any other maintained municipal use there.
Great. Thank you, Andy and Caitlin. I'm just going to take a minute or two to touch on our draft strategic plan, which Caitlin attached in her email with updates in the agenda for tonight's meeting. And I want to say that this draft strategic plan is really should be seen as sort of a living document we can add to it as we take on new initiatives or complete things, delete them, wouldn't that be nice? And I don't know if folks have it in front of them, but we set out certain action steps, and I think we have actually acted on some of them, which is nice. So in terms of increased visibility, that is something that we haven't really worked on yet, but we are planning to launch our new rental assistance program, we decided not to wait to meet with the City Council committee on this. But we are going to have Coupleman and Page take a look at the guidelines and make sure they are not in conflict with CPA funds. And once that is done, then we will be able to launch it. And we will send out notice, memo, or perhaps meet with the City Council committee. But I think we felt like we just wanted to get going on it. And it's possible that there will be other opportunities, I'm hoping, for the trust to communicate our goals and activities more publicly. For example, if we end up contributing to the acquisition of a property. So that's going to be an action step and a goal that we revisit on our strategic plan. And I would suggest that we touch on our strategic plan perhaps quarterly, see how we're doing, and if we want to add anything to it. The next bullet item is update our housing production plan. We're working on that. We've submitted an application to the CPC for some funds, which would enable us to hire a consultant. And then, of course, that will take several steps. Hopefully, if that's approved, we need to issue an RFP and go out and select a consultant to work with us. So we're taking the first step of applying to the CPC for funds, $30,000 to help us with this. Next bullet item is rental assistance. We've already talked about that. Launching this new form of our program once we hear back from Coupleman and Page. The next bullet
Just
item
have a question
is,
on that,
Yes.
Madeline.
Sure, I'm
we have
sorry to be
co-
just rambling on.
That's okay.
ahead.
You're going through it quickly and thoroughly, but I just thought, when I saw that COVID related rental assistance, do we think that that will disappear over time? Will it just become, if somebody is COVID or job, it's kind of falls within the rental assistance for existing tenants, doesn't it? Like the two could overlap. Do we really need a COVID at this point? And maybe I'm being optimistic about COVID.
It's sort of hard to know. I mean, I
Yeah.
would agree with you. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that. I think we're all hoping that COVID is not going to be something that we're having to form special programs in response to, but
Yeah, I think it categorically, it needs to stay. We just don't know.
Okay.
And really this is, we're really just expanding upon the existing program, this is modeled after that program. So we're just adding other uses of the funds. So, but yeah, we should definitely, I don't think we can say goodbye just yet.
Okay. As much as we'd like to.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and do feel free to comment as I go through this. The next bullet item is collaborate with the city and community interest groups on the redevelopment of the Brown School. We are hoping to have the trust represented on the ad hoc committee that the city is forming to pursue the redevelopment of the school, and that will be really great. We did not have that opportunity the last time the city went through this process, and I think this is great that I do believe the trust will be represented. And so we are waiting for that to be formalized.
Is that, and
and-
just I just had a question on when you say provide technical assistance. What kind of assistance would that be?
Well, I guess I feel that each one of us brings insight into affordable housing needs and ways to finance affordable housing and how to sort of address local housing needs. So the trust brings technical assistance to the challenge of this development opportunity. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, by virtue of our expertise here within this trust, we offer a multitude, many years combined of affordable housing expertise that we are basically providing this project.
Okay. Thank you.
And to add to what Suzanne said, the trust did spend a lot of time and energy on looking at the Brown School redevelopment when it was really being scrutinized. A couple of years ago, we made presentations, several of them, to City Council about what has been done elsewhere with school redevelopment. What are the local housing needs? How could this be financed? We really did put a lot of time and energy into it. And so I think we have a lot of ideas and information. And now that we have some new members, we have more resources at our fingertips. And so we have spent a lot of time thinking about this development opportunity.
Yeah.
In regards to collaborate with the city to assess the local housing rehabilitation program, that is something that we have not yet touched on. And I would suggest that we're still in the first quarter of 2022. I would suggest that we dedicate some time in the second quarter to looking at that. And then collaborate with local developers and property owners which share our mission. I see that as ongoing, and it will be good to touch on that each time that we revisit our strategic plan. Any other discussion on this? I guess, as I'm saying, I would like to feel that this is a plan that we touch on regularly and sort of keep track of how we're doing, and do we want to add anything to it?
I agree. This is kind of our scorecard, right? We want to go back at the end of each year and be able to articulate what we've accomplished throughout the year, and through goal setting and strategic planning. This is how we do that, and I think it breaks it down in a way that everyone can understand, both the public and our elected officials as well. Thank you, Madeline, for taking us through that.
So will we be adding goals to it at some point? Specific?
We can add goals anytime we want.
Okay.
I welcome any ideas you have. I mean, there may be opportunities to collaborate with the planning board. I don't know if the 40R district is going to be expanded or modified. Waterfront West, there's a lot of things going on where the trust could play a role that could be added to this.
I mean, even the, providing technical assistance and, solutions to the refugee resettlement situation. That's not yet on our plan, and that's something we can add because it is something we're actively discussing and working on.
I think the refugee settlement program should be a line item for us that we can talk about each time.
Great. I'm making a note of that.
All right. Thanks, Madeline.
Okay. Any other discussion on the strategic plan? I think we are done. We have a date to meet. We don't have minutes to approve. Are we
We
ready
don't
to
have a
adjourn?
quorum.
Don't have a quorum. (7:15) ready to adjourn? Yes, I would suggest we would adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. I make the motion.
All in favor? Great.
Aye.
Hey,
Right.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
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 Night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.